how many sacrifices they had to make to be able to do it for us to have a great life. You just have to trust it. And when something doesn't feel right, it doesn't get any easier. And they're just always like, why do I keep doing it to myself?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Breakout CEO podcast. I'm Jeff Holman, your host, and I'm really glad to be here with Sal Rehmetullah. Sal, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great to get into this. I understand that you've done some big things. Your last company, Stax, you raised you had recurring revenue over $100 million. You had raised, I think, maybe over 200, and sold eventually for over $1 billion.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. And since then, you've been working on a new company, Worth AI, that I think we're going to talk about a little bit more today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super excited to talk about it and just happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Tell me, what's driving you day to day? What is it that motivates you to get up in the morning and work on hard things like this?
That's a good question. First, I've been just really blessed to have had a ton of personal success, financial success. And I think it just comes back to, I know in no way, shape or form am I comparing myself to Michael Jordan in this, but it's the aspect of like Michael Jordan was put on here to play basketball, not baseball. And I just feel like I'm really good at what I do. And so one of those things is, how do we solve complex problems in the financial specific industry and specifically for small businesses? I grew up in small businesses my whole life. When you think about entrepreneurship, it's renowned now as like the sexy item. You can go on Instagram or TikTok and you see everybody that's talking about building some version of the business. My parents migrated here and entrepreneurship was a necessity, right? At the end of the day, we didn't have the college degrees and the things. And so you didn't get the jobs at Lockheed Martin or, at the time, the Microsofts and others that were there. And so in that case, you owned the laundromat or the convenience store or built whatever business you could. And now, full circle, how do we support that, which is frankly the backbone of the United States economy more than anything else? We're all these small businesses. And so how do we create that same level of support? So have a true passion to be able to build in that space. And there's so many different areas to tackle. And we chose the financial side of supporting small businesses.
Cool. Does that mean being raised by immigrant parents who work extremely hard, the work ethic is just ingrained in you? Did you grow up working in the business? It was like just expected, part of what you did, and maybe part of who you are?
It's a good question. My parents had us in the business, but not in any way, shape, or form because it was like they needed us to do any of it. I think my parents just wanted us to be around. And you're right, the work ethic, my dad woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and did the whole thing. And, every story or accolade you hear of, somebody came to the United States with $100 in their pocket, like that's the traditional story and it's very true. But at the same time, for us, my dad just wanted us to be close and learn the business. And so he was wildly successful in his, entrepreneurial efforts, and we got to live great lives and never felt a version of it. But I think we got to learn the goods and the bads of it, right? How many sacrifices they had to make to be able to do it for us to have a great life. And to return back, there were so many things that they didn't get a chance to do. And so when you think about immigrant parents and you see the memes and the stuff out there, that's why education is so important to us, is because they didn't have it. So that's what they fought for. They were like, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to college, you're going to do those things. And that became the pinnacle prize for them to deliver back to us. And now, being able to stand on those footsteps now allow us to be able to give back in different ways. And so we definitely were part of the business, got to grow up in it, and it does absolutely reflect in the work ethic. So I think it's just culturally ingrained, but something that we're super proud of.
Yeah. And you took it a step further. You and your sister, you guys kept the family initiative going and have built now your second business together, exited the first one. Did you guys just always get along? Was it kind of natural to work together like this, or how did that end up?
Yeah, it's funny you ask a question. I think I usually get 2 questions that are usually the most. It's one is like, how do you build $1 billion business? Or 2, which is like, how the F do you work with your sister? And maybe one of those 2. So I get it. And when we jump into it, we went to 10 schools in 12 years. So the other parts of entrepreneurship is it's not always sexy. And, we're growing up with our parents, we migrated where the businesses were and whatever needed to happen. We weren't military children or anything along those lines, but we bounced around a lot. We lived all in the US, including abroad, to be able to build a great life. And that, 10 schools, 12 years, you have your sibling as your best friend. And I think that natural is part of it. And also teaches us to be able to build friends in any community. And, Senior and I have a wealth of people that we get along with. And it's probably just training from having to make friends in so many different areas. And probably why our roots are so deep in Orlando, Florida now, because people always ask, like, why would you build a startup in Orlando? It was the last place we were, and we just refused to leave sort of scenario. But yeah, that's sort of where it all kicked off from. And then the other point of it is, your sibling's the one person you just can't like disown. There's no, whether you have a spouse, you can, have your tiffs or get divorced or do other things. Like, you are blood by the definition when it comes to your sibling. And so there's things you can tell your sibling and then still end up at dinner. And so I think that those all sort of make for a really good marriage of building trust.
Yeah. So it was easy then. Everything went really well, right? But tell us, give us a quick overview of Stax. What are the highlight moments that got you to the point where you were able to exit that business successfully?
Yeah. So Stax was an integrated payments company. Think of it like Square, Stripe, being able to accept credit cards. We were the first ones in the early days to be able to connect, think online and in store. Nowadays that's become a lot more relevant. But 2014, being able to buy something online and returning it into the store, or buying something from your mobile phone or tap to pay, like all that stuff wasn't really accessible for small businesses. It was acceptable for Macy's, right, of where you could buy something and do it, but the small business didn't really have access to all that. And
Because
things
it's
like
plug and play now, right? Versus
plug and
all
play.
custom build back then.
Yeah, think like Shopify and all that stuff is now relevant, but you couldn't do all that stuff before.
Yeah.
And so we went on a journey to connect all this stuff for small businesses. And, we wanted to find a way for them to do it in an affordable way. And so we're the first subscription-based payment provider in what we called omni-channel payments. So how do you do all sorts of payments? And we onboarded over 100,000 small businesses, 40 billion of payment volume, one of the top 10 largest processors in the US, probably powers so many things that you guys probably interact with today, but you probably don't even know it. And yeah, so grew it to 500 people, raised a bunch of capital, 160, 170 million in recurring revenue, and just a really, really great business. And, saving a ton of money for small businesses, but also helping them access to a ton of technology. And so, the business is still around. We're large shareholders still in it, still actively supported from the sidelines, but Stax Payments and, continue to be proud of what we built and fans of the product.
Yeah. But you call what you had an exit, right? It just with rolling over.
Yeah.
Because you're not running that business anymore, right? How was the exit? Day of exit, one scale of 1 to 10, it was a 12, right?
Yeah. So I think we did it twice. So we recapped the business 2 times. I think the first time it's just like, it's a sense of relief first, right? Because you built for so long, and it doesn't matter if it's 2 years for somebody or 10 years for somebody, it feels infinite, right? Like just the grind that you're in for so long.
Yeah.
Even when things are amazing, it's just hard work. And so I think when you get to see, really big numbers on a spreadsheet and really big numbers enter your bank account, you're pretty dumbfounded and proud in all of the things. And then it's short-lived by the next expectation and goalpost, right? And I think that becomes the next chase. And we did it again, north of $1 billion, and once again had all of those pieces. But then you find yourself back in sort of that hamster wheel of being like, okay, do I want to keep doing this? And each time to grow a business between each stage, there's a difference, right? There's a growth stage, a venture capital stage, there's a private equity stage, there's a public stage. And I think each one you have to develop into a version that's different. And I think we had reached a stage where we, almost knew every employee there, and we were entering a private equity pace where, true dollars and bottom line dollars mattered, and EBITDA and all the things that we always thought mattered in a different way. And I think that it was probably the time for us to bring leadership that had scaled businesses in that format rather than something that was founder led. And always bittersweet, because it's like your child. Like, if anybody has children, I would imagine it feels like what you do when they go off to college. You just hope you did all the right things, and it's still your kid and you're going to do everything to support it, but you just can't make all the decisions anymore. So it's probably a little bit of that still to this day.
Well, our third just left this fall to college, and you just hope and pray that they will make smart decisions, and that they'll want to come back home if they don't make a smart decision, right? So yeah. I don't know if it's identical, but man, you're putting a lot out there, I think. Well, and so after that, I think I've heard that you compared selling your business to maybe having some hard time, maybe some loss of purpose, and that's not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
How was that for you, or what came about after the sale?
Yeah, I think Sunira and I are slightly different, right? Sunira, my sister and partner in the business, I think she'd sacrificed a ton. And first time she really got to spend time with her family. She has two girls. She was like, I want to be there to pick up my kids and drop off my kids and do the field trips. And so she really embraced getting back into that. For me at the time, single, no kids, one, boredom kicks in. So it doesn't matter how many times I'm working out or playing pickleball or doing everything under the sun. The other part was just introduced myself for over a decade as like Sal Rehmetullah, president and founder of Stax, right? Like there's an element of like, okay, that's not me anymore. Like, who am I? Right? There's a personality aspect that just became so a part of you. I was used to 14-hour days. I knew where I was having lunch, dinner, travel, like that was booked for weeks in advance, right? Like you just knew everything and you lived and died by calendar, and insert all this free time, insert no true connection to something that drove so much purpose. You have to reinvent yourself. And I think that was just a struggle, right? I traveled, I played golf, I did all those things. I was offered CEO gigs at other companies, and I think it just came down to, wanting to control my destiny as always, but I knew I wanted to build again. Didn't exactly know what it was going to be. And I knew I wanted to be in this space, but yeah, so it was definitely difficult and took like 3 to 6 real months until we came about with Worth. And now I'm re-energized as ever, but this time, I can introduce myself more broadly as still a pretty terrible pickleball player, but a father and, just somebody that has more to define themselves than that was work, but work's just a big, big.
So it's not that you went from your Stax identity to avoid to having to adopt Worth, so you had another identity. You developed personal identity. I mean, I'm sure you've had it all along, but you developed more aspects of personal identity during that gap period. Do you feel like you're entering your Worth chapter differently than you exited your Stax chapter?
Yeah, I think so. I think, freedom of dollar brings freedom. So there's just reality of what it is. But I think approaching it a little bit more gracefully within that, right? I would say I'm probably more conviction this time around than I even had last time around. And it's just as much fun, if not more fun. I'm a student at heart and all the things and the amount of technology and stuff that's happening out there. I think just being a part of it is just amazing. But yeah, there's a ton of lessons that are learned from there. I do think that there's a part of my personality that is Worth. I eat, sleep, and breathe it every day. And I'm sure my 3 a.m. thoughts are still a part of it. But, as we had some of the questions early on, my favorite parts of my day are also just waking up and hanging out with my son for an hour. And, I think there's just parts of life that have also developed and evolved. So it's not all one sided, but I think the next time around, once we sell this thing or whatever happens with this, I'm sure will be a different level of transition, but I wouldn't doubt that I'm back with something if that was the case.
Yeah. Well, I think capacity expands as you do these things, right? For me, from a child perspective, I remember that when I had my first child, and I'm like, man, what did I must have had a ton of free time, because I don't know what I was doing with all the free time before I'm doing, day in and day out with a child.
Yep.
And you'd think that I would have learned the lesson, but when I had my second child, I'm like, man, what did I do with all my free time when I only had one child? So I know you're headed that direction.
Yeah. No, I believe it and can sense it, and that's all part of it, but exciting times nonetheless.
Definitely. Well, tell us a little bit about what Worth is, but tell me also, when did you know, at what moment or what point did you say to yourself, we got something here. This is cool.
Yeah, I'll answer both. So one, going back to sort of the days of Stacks, like anything else, you reflect back and we're like, okay, we're $1 billion company. Why weren't we five? For anybody that knows small businesses, small business underwriting is hard. And the reason it's hard is like Sally's shoe store and Joe's pizza shop are not the same business. They're independent P&Ls, the way that they operate, the way you think about balance sheet cash flow, how they acquire customers are just so different. Compared to you and me, Jeff, we both have a credit score. We both have a version of income, whether it's W-2 or 1099, and we both have a propensity to pay our bills. We both have a version of a mortgage or a lease or a car payment. So when we think about personal credit score, it's just the historical precedence of paying your bills on time. Whether your bill is $10,000 or $1,000, we could both have an 800 credit score, and you may have $50 million in the bank account, and I might have $500,000 in the bank account, but we could both have an 800 credit score. Businesses don't operate that way. And so it requires such manual effort to be able to underwrite them. And so we were like, it's so hard for any business to start anything. You need things which are known as like beneficial owners. You need to verify that the bank statement actually has your name on it and the business's name on it, that you can actually sign for it. And then the way that you operate, what are your terms and conditions and all the things before you even get a simple credit card.
Yeah.
I can go on my phone right now and sign up for an Apple Wallet credit card in maybe 30 seconds and walk across the street and use it. If you try to go sign up for an American Express or a Venture Spark card or pick the brand, it's going to send you like 50 questionnaires and upload your SS4 form and all this other stuff. And we wanted to simplify that process, right? There's just got to be a more modern day of age. We went out and connected everything under the sun. And what's crazy is post COVID, you actually had this world of small business information that actually entered the internet. I know it sounds like it's not that long ago, but Secretary of States all had to go online. The IRS had to go online. Payroll, all ADP and ACH all went online. Because if you remember like PPP loans and all these buzzwords people had, it actually forced this huge amount of information. So we said, well, how do we capture all this information to do that? And so in short, what we do is we do financial underwriting. So full onboarding with 3 fields. If you can give me your name, address, and either your social or your EIN number, we can fill out almost any financial application for you. That's applying for a credit card, applying for a loan, applying for anyone else. And we sell the solution set to the large enterprises. So we actually sell to folks like, think the Bank of Americas or the JP Morgans of the world or payment providers of the world to enable them to get information from you simply. And that's sort of the aspect. We've been at it for 2+ years. We're on fire winning all those customer bases. And the long-term view is to actually come back to you, Jeff, and say, here's your wallet or token of information, right? And so just like if you ever click like Apple Pay or Shop Pay, you click one button and being done. Why can't you just click one button and apply for something? They should have all that information that you control and security over to be able to.
To use an analogy, I recently broke my foot. I had to go and have foot surgery and all this stuff, right? And every time I'd go into the doctor's office, that's partly why I'm shifting around, trying to keep my foot in the right spot here. Every time I go in the doctor's office, they'd be like, okay, fill out this form. I'm like, I just filled this form out online. I just filled this form out at the reception desk. I just filled this form out wherever. Like literally it would fill the same form out 5 times for one appointment. And I know you're not in the medical field, but I think a lot of people feel that frustration. Like, this is not efficient. There's no reason with today's technology, this should have to happen. You're doing that, simplifying that in the financial side of things and working with the financial service providers to leverage that for the benefit of the consumers.
You nailed it, right? It's the same way, like pick whatever bank you work at, wherever you have a business checking account or even a checking account. If you go apply for a credit card, they will literally ask you for exactly what we said, a brand new field that you're going to have to type in. Jeff, you're going to retype your name. You're like, don't you have all this information? Like, you've already done all this for me. Why am I, just because I want a new product, I have to start this whole process again? And so I think that's what we're trying to change. And it's been great so far.
Well, what's the traction been like? And to get back to the former question, when did you say to yourself, you know what, this is not just a good idea, like this is actually working?
Yeah, I'd say the world's largest providers in the world now use our product. So from payment companies to large banks, I think it's like it's like me asking you, does the DMV suck? Right? Like there's not a person that's going to disagree with you. And that's how it feels when we take our product in there. I think people are more perplexed that nobody's ever done it. Right? So it's more simplicity. People are just like, wait, why has nobody done it? How did you do it? So a lot of the questions we get asked are just like, how? Right. And I think that is where you really feel like you have something, because when you think about the simplest ideas are usually the best ones, and having a business credit score or onboarding thing, I think that people really resonate with because they get it pretty instantaneously. And to your point, within 2 minutes, you can reference it back to the medical aspect within it. Like you understand the pain point, regardless if you work with small businesses or not. And I think that is a story that we get to hear all the time. And I'd say most of the conversation we have on the sales side, most people are asking on how to work with us compared to like trying to like what feature set or functionality that they're comparing to. They're just really trying to figure out where they can plug this in within their ecosystem to have a better experience.
Well, I'm really curious, it seems like an obvious pain, like you said, and a huge pain. It's across the board. Every small business owner, every individual consumer, like everybody's experience. How are you able to be the first one to solve this? Is nobody else doing this?
Nobody's doing it to a level we do. I think that there are point solutions across the board. there are things called like KYC, know your customer, KYB, know your business. There's a bunch of these like data providers, but nobody provides a holistic approach to it, right? And so we said we're going to go directly to all these integrations. Like we went directly to integrate in the IRS. We had to go through every 50 Secretary of States plus the Postal Service. We had to do this over 140 countries. We spent $20 million just building data and data integrations. It's not a small feat to start off with. So it's a big problem, but once you're able to crack it, I think that's a big thing. The other big thing is timing, right? So you can hear the buzzwords of AI and large language models and all that stuff. The ability to process the amount of information we're talking about has fairly recently become available. And so those all also have to play into it. It's not that, somebody can have a grand idea and not be it. You can bring an iPhone in, the 1500s, but you will be useless, right? So you have to have relevant technology and relevant ideas at the right times. And that's where I'd say we're also at this perfect center point where we understand the pain points. We've learned from both the small business and then you have the technology available. And the ability to do it. All the governmental agencies and stuff that have usually been very like, we will build it or very shielded are now a lot more open to this style of information as well and working with folks like us because they want to create a better experience for not only their own customers, but internally as well.
The wave swell is active now and you're catching the right wave at the right time. Well, so you don't play small, do you? You're like, we're going to tackle the biggest issue that we can think of with some of the biggest players out there. What attracts you to going so big?
I think this time around, a lot of it wasn't monetarily driven, right? It was like building legacy. And for us, can we build long tail 5, 7, 10 years, a singular wallet or a business credit score that outlives us, right? So all of us can come on the scene and talk about our FICO credit score and ability to sort of think about our credit worthiness in that way. I think we wanted to build something that was legacy driven, not just for ourselves, but that can actually drive small business. And so I think that's probably the biggest motivator. There's multiple things that come out from it. Equality of lending, clear, transparent decision making, the ability to help you and your own business coach and learn to stay in business, financial literacy. There's so many outputs of what we believe our product ends up driving. And so at the core of it, we just believe it supports a small business. I think that was just important to us. And small stuff's boring. I'm not here to build features or products. We want to build platforms. And that's what gets us excited.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you say legacy, it makes me think back to earlier in our conversation, talking about your parents. What would something like this done for your parents? Would it have been a big thing? Is that kind of when you say legacy, like you're thinking, man, we can make a difference for a lot of people and the majority of who are making up the economy of every country around the world? Is that what legacy is?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And when you think about it, for anybody that owns small businesses, like there's a clause called like a personal guarantee. You have to still use the same FICO credit score that we talked about that we're trying to differentiate for, even in your business world. And so it becomes really tough when a business can't stand by itself. And then you insert the amount of entrepreneurs that are growing in today's day and age, whether you're an influencer, whether you're an Etsy shop, whether it is that you grow. How do you support these businesses to grow? You don't have 10 years of financial history and business plans and the alternate levels of data that exist from your Shopify store or your 20 million Instagram followers. How do you monetize that to a traditional bank, right? You can't. $20 million influence followers probably makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so like being able to do that is difficult. So you have to think about the way that the world is evolving. And we believe we can become that new standard to understand businesses broadly and support those small businesses than the general P&L terms and the things that were built over 100 years ago to be able to stand it. And that hasn't changed. And so how do you enable a lot of this? I think it's the legacy what we want to build behind to support them, because it would have been very impactful for folks that were my parents that didn't have a history of W-2 income and that couldn't use, they moved from Pakistan, Karachi. Those, whatever the term for W-2s coming from there, are irrelevant in this country, right? So how do you think about those things to help support them?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a very worthwhile, impactful, meaningful journey that you're on. What's been maybe the biggest obstacle that you've had to deal with and the insights that you've used to overcome that in this business?
There's always compliance and fear, right? Like anything else, when you simplify things, there's somebody in the corner that, built this 56-page, document that they make you fill out every time, right? So it's like, how can we go from this, mini binder to one page in 6 fields, right? And it's tough. It's tough because you have to sort of rethink and retrain what you're trying to get to. And usually when you ask people why this question is there, they probably don't even know because somebody added it 5 years ago, 7 years ago, a predecessor that is, no longer even part of the company. And so everybody builds everything for edge cases. And you sort of have to think the opposite way of saying, hey, let's not do edge cases. Let's handle edge cases with edge cases. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. So change management, I think, is what it comes down to. It's just like helping people understand that they're not going to lose their shirt on something. It's not going to be a change. It's just an alternate way to get the same answer. And then if you're looking at it from the answer backwards, does it still achieve the same thing? And that's the innovators and the folks that you want supporting and driving the organization. We've been blessed to have, 30 to 40 new customers that are all on that journey with us, that are part of the Global 2000, that are all, hoping for that same change.
Well, that's no small feat, though. I mean, we often hear about tech debt, right? You build your platform in the wrong stack and you have to rebuild it later because it's not convertible or scalable or whatever. I think what you're talking about, if I can put it this way, it sounds like there's a ton of regulatory debt out there. The way these regulatory agencies have done stuff have created, like you said, questions that just persist because nobody knows if they have authority to get rid of that question or not. So they just leave it and it compounds. I've seen the same thing in like patent portfolios that we've managed for clients. And I'm like, guys, you're not using these patents anymore. And they're like, yeah, but I don't want to tell the board that we're going to drop a patent. So let's just keep paying the fees on it and we'll just be there. I'm like, I understand, but that's, it's this technology debt but in your case, regulatory debt. How, it makes sense that it's there. How have you guys dealt with that effectively or differently from other people?
Yeah, I think the one big thing is people want to change. And the reason they want to change is, like, in our world, fintechs are starting to kick their ass, right? So I think that there's so much disruption happening. Pick any one of these providers. If you're in the credit space, there's new credit cards that are coming out that are instantaneous. If you're in the banking space, there's so many online banks without a single branch that have come out that are instantly opening up bank accounts, check accounts. So they're finding alternative methods. And so these, large behemoth customers that have hung on so much, need to adopt, right? And so the way you do it is, most people historically have always said, we're going to build it. I think they've realized that the pace of technology, they're just not going to be able to. So your two choices are, you either buy competitors or you buy the solution sets. And I think that's the world we're seeing. It's going back to 2003. You had, Mark Benioff inventing, coming in and talking about Salesforce and all the things that you think about, like, what is this cloud, right? And how are we talking about a CRM system? We believe we're in that same stage, which is just like a completely different viewpoint of a similar solution set or problem set that you're going to have to rethink the way that you do it. And I think that most of these organizations are now in the willingness place to definitely hear and or actually action.
That's really interesting because it seems like if you had been 5 years ago trying to do this or 8 years ago trying to do this, you would have had a lot easier time building it outside of the partnerships with the largest entities out there, because they might have said, yeah, we're not doing that. We're going to do it ourselves. But now it's almost counterintuitive because so many people are building new technologies that aren't partnered, that to go maybe would have thought to do 20 years ago, to go to them and say, hey, let's partner with you. We'll build this for you. Is it a little bit counterintuitive now to be going and building with them as opposed to building outside of them?
It absolutely is. I think, look, we built the core foundational piece, but all the large providers have their own spin and, what makes them special. But I think it is, but I think that's just the way the world is. And I think the new leadership that's continuously come into place, not to compare the Blockbuster Netflix analogy, but they don't want to be that, right? They want to make sure that they don't get beaten by some incumbent or some fintech that's coming out there. And how do you have to stay relevant? And I think consumers are finally demanding a lot too, specifically in the small business era. In the consumer market, we click Uber Eats and all this stuff and expect a car to show up in 2 seconds. If it says 11 minutes, we're like canceling and ordering another one. Like, think about that, right? And so that same philosophy is now spreading to small businesses, which is like, well, why am I waiting for so long? Why am I doing this? And that control is shifting. And when that control starts to shift, they have to adapt. Otherwise, they will lose that market share. And so the people that are dominant that market share for so long are making sure that they stay at the top of it and relevant from the lessons that they've seen their predecessors go to.
Yeah. What do you think as you're growing this? What do you think the one or two most impactful actions are going to be for you for the next few years?
I think it's making our customers raving fans, right? So at the first of it, we got to make sure that the core customers that are coming through are wildly successful. But I think as we continue to do it, being able to deliver that value back to the small business. So I think over time, the small business will be able to see their worth wallet, be able to see transparently. Like when you think about credit scores that have been out for, I don't know, 50 years, they're only became relevant in the last 10. And that's because things like Credit Karma and Discover and all these people came out and said, hey, Jeff, let me show you what's happening in your credit score. Let me show you what impacted it because you got educated on it. Well, that's the same level we're going to have to bring to small business. Use these cupcakes. Let me tell you why you're not getting a loan or why you're only getting $5,000 on a credit card because you have concentration risk on these two customers because you don't have this information on that. And so as you can use this information to re-educate the small business to frankly transform themselves, you're going to end up creating a better cycle for them. And so that's what we're hoping for in short order. And we believe we're right on the path to do it.
Well, that's fantastic. And it sounds like hugely impactful to get something like that going. I'd love to ask you one last question. Well, maybe two. One would be, what's the one thing that you think a CEO trying to follow a similar path might do that can leverage some of the insights and successes you've had? But before getting to that, is Worth AI the type of platform that somebody with a small business should go to today, sign up for? Like who should be checking this out?
I appreciate that. Today, we don't support small business directly. We do have worthscore.com, which you can sign up for as a wait list to get your score. We're still probably a year away from it, but right now we're really focused on the enterprise, and because we need the large folks to adopt it for it to be relevant for the small business. You know, if we give it to the small business, it's great, but they just can't action it. And so we wanted to make sure that the large folks are adopting and then come back. So a full network within it. But
is there something that small business could do now to support this? Because it sounds like is there should they be asking their banks, hey, how are we doing this? Or have you checked this out? Is that
so any place that you guys bank or get credit cards from or get financially underwritten that takes and sucks, ask them about, using Worth or one of those solution sets. It's always great to do it. And if you're a regional bank, a large bank, a credit provider, anybody that does any type of financial underwriting that's listening to this, please, give it. I think it's kind of what you talked about was a strategy or execution early on. I think you got to take the leap of faith and then execute, right? I don't believe that any of us, at least for me, we're going to invent something that's like never been thought of. There's playbooks that have been done. And I think there's a lot of great copy and paste material that exists out there. I think you have to do what you do better than others. I think you can find things to do it. And so I think learning from and listening to autobiographies and all the other people that you may see, like how do you sort of learn from those lessons, make them your own flavors. But I think that's just what it comes down to. And so find the right mentors and the people that have been there and walked the trails behind you. And sure, you're going to break off into your own areas that make you special and different. But there's a great path ahead to be able to use a lot of the people that have been in front of us to be able to continue to execute.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on the show, Al. And maybe we should have had your sister on here too. It would have been fun to have the two of you together. But it's been great to hear your insights and really appreciate what you've shared with the audience.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And to our audience, thanks again for joining us on The Breakout CEO. We'll see you next time. Be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you enjoy the show, a rating or a review goes a long way. Our mission is to promote the stories of breakout CEOs in scaling SaaS, e-commerce, and tech companies to equip peer CEOs with valuable perspectives and confidence. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of The Breakout CEO. I'm Jeff Holman, and I'll see you next time.